everyone, and welcome to Just a Thought. I'm your host, Just a Thought Jeff, and today we are talking about facing our fears and the different types of fears that can paralyze our lives. We're all destined to do great things in life, but sometimes things keep us from achieving the greatness that we so often deserve. So today we're going to dig into why fears hold us back, and we are going to try to figure out a way to correct those behaviors. But before we do, as always, I want to throw a shout out to my CLTV crew. Looks like Miss Candy is back in the house. I've been gone for a minute. You were sorely missed, but thank you for all the help that you give to the Just a Thought show and to get it out to the people that are taking time to hear this. But also make sure to check out the content on CLTV 24/7, 365. There's valuable information, entertaining content, and great conversations you can catch, not only on this show, but on the other shows as well. Another person I want to throw a shout out to this week is Dre Morris and his staff at the One Verse Consulting psychology firm. If you missed last week's show, Dre joined me for an hour to discuss why people of color should explore therapy and focusing on mental health. And over the course of the week, I've received quite a bit of feedback, positive feedback on that episode. So, Dre, if you're watching, thank you again, my brother, for joining me. And we'll definitely have to dive into this mental health thing again. With this being the last Saturday in June, this is Mental Health Awareness Month for men, but we're going to be talking a little bit about fear and how it relates to keeping us from greatness. When you look at fear, this is not just a male conversation. This is for everyone. When we look at fear, we want to look at how it affects our physical body, how the fear can also affect our mental state, our social interactions, as well as our spiritual interactions. Now, from a physical standpoint, when we're afraid of something, certain things happen. There may be an increase in your heart rate. There may be an increase in blood pressure, rapid breathing, sweating, trembling or shaking. You may feel nauseated. You may have tense muscles, and it may even affect your sleep. So let's look at the increased heart rate and blood pressure. When our bodies feel afraid, we either go into one or two ways. We either become a fighter or we become a flight. We respond to the trigger, and the trigger releases adrenaline. And in our heart, while our heart begins to beat faster, our blood pumps through our body quicker. We're either preparing to fight whatever that trigger is, or we're going to run from it. It just depends on what your personality type is. When it comes to the rapid breathing, we breathe more quickly to take in more oxygen and fuel our muscles. This can sometimes lead to hyperventilation. So breathing out too much carbon dioxide, that's what hyperventilation really means. When we hyperventilate, that may cause us to get dizzy. We may feel tingling in our hands and in our feet. And in some cases, some people even faint when they get really overwhelmed like that. Another factor that comes into play and that really affects me personally is sweating.
Did your daughter in love FaceTime video?
When I am afraid, when I am nervous about a situation, I start sweating profusely. It's one of those things, our body releases sweat to cool us down, anticipating the physical exertion of fighting or fleeing. Sweating can make our skins feel clammy and cold to the touch. So this is another reaction of fear. Another situation is trembling and shaking. When I get super upset, I've been in situations where I start shaking, and I don't know if it's one of those things of where I'm trying to control that emotion and try not to explode. But if this is one of your kind of personality traits where you get upset, you start shaking, you start trembling, you can't, focus on the issue at hand. All that is extra adrenaline shooting through your body, trying to help you cope with whatever it is that you're dealing with. Then nausea. For me, when I get extra nervous, sometimes you get that feeling like you want to throw up. You have an unsettled stomach. These are some of the things that fear produces in our body and that really keeps us from greatness. Then obviously there's tense muscles. Our muscles tighten up in preparation for the action. I was recently in a car accident a couple years back, and before impact, I found myself tensing and grabbing the steering wheel very hard, bracing for that impact. And once after the impact, I felt sore muscles because of that. Fear is a very, very powerful thing that can affect your body, and you really don't realize it's affecting you until after the fact. But the tension can lead to physical pain, especially in your neck, in your back, and in your shoulders. And then obviously, fear can affect your sleep. Chronic fear and anxiety can interfere with your ability to fall asleep. So, have you ever had a night where something was on your mind, you were tossing and turning? Or let's say you fell asleep and you woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning with that issue on your mind. When you're stressed out, when you're living in this level of fear, it's hard to stay asleep, and it's hard to get that good night's sleep that you need so bad. The next day you're tired. You feel a shell of yourself because you didn't rest well. This is because our body is in a state of hyperarousal, making it difficult to relax and to wind down. So it's important to note that while these physical symptoms can be uncomfortable, they're a normal response to the perceived threat. So these stimuli that we feel aren't out of the norm. Once the threat has passed, though, our nervous system kicks into a calmness, which relaxes our body. However, for people with anxiety disorders, these physical symptoms can persist and interfere with daily life. Seeking help from a healthcare provider can provide relief. Another thing that we look at in terms of fear is the emotional and the psychological effects. So, anxiety and feeling uneased about a situation. Sometimes people have panic attacks. Some people have irrational fears, or sometimes we refer to them as phobias. We all, I think, on some level have some form of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. You hear that talked about a lot on the news nowadays. We see people go through a level of depression. Then through that depression, the increased or decreased self-esteem and decrease in confidence. And then we also, in fear, have an avoidance behavior, avoiding things that trigger that fear. So when you look at the anxiety and the unease part of things, a persistent feeling of worriness, a nervousness, apprehension about the future or specific situations. This can be a low-level hurt of anxiety or an intense feeling of dread. So let's say, for example, you have to have a unpleasant conversation with someone, especially with someone that you can't communicate very easily with. Anxiety kind of comes in. You kind of dread the fact that you have to talk to them. Or have you ever been in a situation where someone is calling you and you see their name on the caller ID and you're like, damn, I don't want to pick up the phone. Your blood pressure instantly goes up. You're anxious because you already know that the conversation isn't going to work out to be productive. These are some of the examples of that. Then you have some certain people who have panic attacks. Panic attacks are sudden, intense episodes of fear accompanied by physical symptoms like a racing heart or shortness of breath, dizziness, and feeling of like doom or death. You feel like the world is going to end. Panic attacks can also be terrifying that people avoid going places or doing things that they fear may trigger another attack. So we all have, things that kind of set us off and that trigger us. But at the end of the day, this is a normal response with some people. If this is something that, you deal with personally, we're going to talk a little bit later about how to overcome this and some of the things you can do to help, you navigate through this situation. Then another thing, the phobias, irrational fears, extreme persistent fears of specific things like phobias of spiders, of heights, claustrophobia, being in enclosed places, that interfere with a person's ability to function normally. For me, a phobia for mine is heights. I'm not going to get on a roller coaster anymore. A couple years back, my son wanted to go to Six Flags, and he wanted me to get on the Goliath. And I let my male ego kind of get in the way and say, yeah, I'm tough enough to do it. But once I got on that roller coaster, I was screaming the whole time out of fear. And after getting back to the ground, I wanted to kiss the ground and be thankful that I was on my 2 feet again. The fear of those heights and being, going down a hill at, certain speeds, I told myself I didn't want to get on a roller coaster ever again. And so if you've ever been in that place, the one way to overcome it is just to do it again. So that's a challenge that I'm going to have to put in front of myself. Another issue with this fear is the depression, chronic fear, and sadness, feeling bad. These depressive situations that we feel are disorders. Depression involves persistent feelings of sadness. You always feel hopeless. There's a lack of interest in people or activities. When you get into that place, fear creates depression. Then there's also a decrease in self-esteem and confidence. Fear can make us feel powerless and incompetent. We start, questioning whether we're good enough for situations, whether we're good enough for people, whether we're good enough for ourselves. And then the more we question about how good we feel about ourselves, our confidence seems to go down. So now the things that we used to do, we don't necessarily do anymore. In other words, we start to avoid it. So that's kind of a result of what fear can do to you. Then another thing that we look at is avoidance behaviors. To avoid feeling afraid or anxious, people may avoid certain situations, activities, places, or people. So I know I had an auntie back in the day. I already knew that whenever you went over there, she was going to criticize you. So there was a lot of internal things going on in my head of why I didn't want to go to her house. And I would beg my parents, please don't make me go. I don't want to go. But they would make you, and you couldn't argue or fight with them, not like kids do today. But you had to kind of suck it up and deal with that situation. And every single time we went over there, she did a great job of making you feel less than. So when we adopt that avoidance behavior, it really kind of stunts our growth as people. So we got to look at a way of how to try to get through that. It's important to seek help from a mental health professional if fear is interfering with our daily lives and causing significant distress. We're going to stop right there and pay a couple bills, though, and we'll be right back here to kind of dig deeper into the behavioral part of it. We'll see you in a minute.
It's all about Caribbean International Shipping. That's right. Do you need more information on shipping your items to the U.S. Southeast region or to the Caribbean? Have you ever heard of Caribbean International Shipping? You shop, they pack, and ship. They also offer residential pickup services. Support our business, like, share, and call. For your barrel shippings, let us know. The number to call is 470-718-9675 on WhatsApp or 770-323-1111. Caribbean International Shipping, the only way to send your stuff to the islands.
Hey, I'm Ariana Grande. Hey, yo, this Cardi B. What's up? It's Megan Thee Stallion.
Yo, this is
You're looking for a home? You're looking for land? Look no further. Elite Realty Dominica got you covered. Whether it's to buy a home or build a home or just an investment property, contact Nicole London at 888-860-2366. That's 888-860-2366. Or you can log on to DominicaEliteRealty.com for all your inquiries and questions. Elite Realty Dominica, where exquisite living is defined by nature.
That's just how we roll.
Let me tell you who I'm rolling with. I am rolling with the Dot Experiment. I don't know if you ever heard of them before, but the Dot Experiment is here to help you with all your cell phone and computer needs. The Dot Experiment is here for all your tech, all your software problems, whether it's the storage full, your laptop won't boot, or you're just tired of your current setup, or you're just looking for tech support. The Dot Experiment is the only way to go. Call them today, 404-259-1343, or you can email them at support@thedotexperiment.com for a free consultation. Don't waste your money buying tech stuff and tech software that you don't understand and don't know how to use. Contact the Dot Experiment, the professionals in fixing all your stuff, man. So before you buy that cell phone, before you get that computer, contact the Dot Experiment. It's the only way to go. I'm telling you, that's how we roll it over here.
And we are back. So today we're talking about the mental health aspect of life. We're kind of diving into the element of fears. And as we kind of mentioned before, fear has the ability to affect our physical bodies, our blood pressure, rapid breathing, sweating, trembling, nausea, tense muscles, sleep disturbances. Fear also affects our emotional and psychological. It causes anxiety, panic attacks, phobias. We experience PTSD. We experience depression, decreased self-esteem, as well as we avoid behaviors that puts us in that space. The next area of fear that we want to look into is the behavioral effect, the avoidance of perceived threats, even if that threat is not dangerous. Fear affects what's called risk aversion. We start to avoid certain tasks or certain situations or certain people because we're afraid of a negative outcome. Aggression or defensiveness is a response to that perceived threat. So if you feel threatened, are you the type of person that's going to fight? Are you going to use your words? Are you going to use your hands? Or do you become defensive and you kind of shy away and back up and try to avoid confrontation? Fear kind of messes with our impaired decision making and problem solving. When we're super afraid, we don't necessarily think as clear as we should. And then as far as problem solving, when we're faced with a problem, when we're faced with fear, sometimes we have actions or do certain things that are outside our character and have people kind of looking at us sideways when we're in that state of mind. Fear also creates decreased performance and productivity due to the distraction of fear and the preoccupation with the fear. So the avoidance part of it, people may avoid situations, activities, or places they perceive as threatening, even if they're not dangerous. So this avoidance can provide temporary relief for the anxiety, but can reinforce the fear over time and limit a person's life. So let's say, for example, you go to a restaurant and the food isn't necessarily very good. You say, well, the service wasn't good, the food wasn't good. Typically, you're not going to go back. And that's probably the most common sense approach to it. However, let's say they had something on the menu that's better than anything else that you can get anywhere else, and you decide, you know what, I'm going to take a chance and give them a second chance. That's one way to avoid that fear, because that experience the second time could potentially, give you a better feeling about that restaurant. We look at risk aversion, fear of failure, fear of rejection, or negative outcomes can lead to people avoiding taking risks. This can hold you back from pursuing opportunities for growth. So let's say you're at the job and you feel like you need a promotion or you want a raise, but you're afraid to ask your boss or to have that conversation. If you see the value in what you bring to the table, there's nothing wrong with speaking up for yourself. And if they give you an answer that you don't necessarily agree, it puts you into a place of deciding what your next steps are. So you're having this conversation with your boss about a promotion or about a raise, and they say, well, you know what, right now isn't a good time for that, and they give you reasons A, B, and C. The question that you have to ask yourself after that conversation is, what can you do in your life to get to that goal that you want to reach. So they say, well, we don't have the budget for a raise right now. Do you look for another job that potentially can meet your financial goals? What if they tell you that you are not qualified to take that job? So do you need to get some education in order to be qualified? But what if you're already doing the job and you're already qualified, but they're giving you an excuse? Then the way that I would process that is basically finding a different situation that can utilize and take advantage of my skill set and help me, be better. Risk aversion also comes into people that want to start a business. As a motivational speaker and as an entrepreneur, one of the biggest fears that people have and that people tell me all the time is that they have this fear of believing in themselves. It amazes me how much energy we as human beings are willing to put into other people's dreams, into other people's endeavors, but yet we won't give ourselves our own energy. When starting a new business, that's taking a leap of faith and jumping out there. So, people say, well, when I was younger, I wish I could have did this or I would have did this, but this situation kept me from doing that. Starting a business, I tell you folks, is one of the most fearful things, but it's one of the most rewarding things because it's forcing you to believe in you. And so one way to overcome this fear is to dive in and face it head on. Another avoidance or risk aversion thing that we might run into is maybe in a relationship setting. You might have had your eye on a woman, or ladies, you might have an eye on a guy, and you're a little nervous about approaching them because of the fear of rejection, maybe the fear of the unknown. And so you sit there and you might admire from afar, but you won't take the leap of finding out if that person has an interest in you. And so down the line and later on in your life, when you're having this conversation with a friend or a family member, telling them the story about when you missed an opportunity to step to a person, these fears and the result of what we think is going to happen is keeping us from, potentially great opportunities. So the biggest thing with the risk aversion thing is stunning our growth. We as individuals need to learn how to keep growing. Another thing that comes out of this fear is aggression or defensiveness. So for some reason, fear can manifest as aggression or defensiveness. So a person that, you have you ever talked to somebody before and then they kind of snap back at you with a real snappy response? You kind of hit a nerve, you kind of made them mad. Well, the aggressive tactic that people use or that people throw back at you, it happens because they are afraid to face that issue. We have a tendency to push things down. Things that we don't want to deal with, fears that we don't want to face, we kind of go into this avoidance place, and in our brains we push it down. And when they come back up, then we're triggered. And sometimes people that don't necessarily know you on an intimate level will say things to trigger you, and they don't know that they triggered you, but the question is, how do you deal with that trigger? So I was talking to someone recently. They were telling me about a conversation that they were having with a family member, and the family member said something a little sideways, which triggered the person that they were talking to. And I asked them how did they handle it, and they said that they, found a way to get off the phone. But being nosy, I wanted to find out why did they want to get off the phone, and why didn't they want to finally put that issue to bed, or at least get some clarity with that person that was kind of throwing out those darts. And they told me that they hadn't realized that that was still a trigger. Apparently, the situation that was spoken about on that conversation had happened like 10 years ago. So that person hadn't healed from that trigger. And so that goes to show that when we press things down, doesn't mean that we healed. In order to truly heal, we have to face those situations head on and figure out what we need to do in order to make ourselves the best possible person that we can be. Another issue with the fear factor is the impaired decision-making and problem-solving. Fear can cloud our judgment and lead to impulsive decisions. I recently was talking to another person who was going through some serious situations with their family. and was having some financial situations, and they were talking about how they were going to maneuver through those circumstances. And being a true friend, you know, I wanted to listen to what they were saying, but however, I wanted to, you know, share some advice with them to help them get back on track, because you recognize when a person isn't speaking clearly just by how they move, what they say, or what they don't say. Sometimes silence is another thing that, you know, fear generates. So this person had made a phone call to someone and basically said some things that had nothing to do with the situation, which when that person, you know, took in the information that person A was saying, it created a whole argument over something that didn't necessarily have to be an argument. So there was fear from the person that was expressing, and there was a fear from the person that was hearing. And when you have these impaired decision conversations, when you're not in your right mind and you're really talking crazy, that's when fear is really at its height and it's taking over your life. So when we're in a state of fear, we're more likely to react without fully thinking through the consequences or the actions of what we're saying or what we're doing. There's also a decreased performance in our productivity. When we're preoccupied with fear, fear can distract us from the task at hand. So that's why you see people who are like surgeons, for example. They sometimes like to work in a quiet environment because they need to be precise in their surgical practices. We need to be precise in what we do in our lives, and sometimes extra noise or extra things going on in our environment kind of, you know, throws us off guard or throws us off course. This can lead to mistakes. This can lead to decreased productivity and the underperformance in our work or in our studies. Fear or failure can also create a self-fulfilling prophecy telling us that we already knew we weren't good enough. So what we need to really focus on is being as mindful as we can in every situation that we walk into, and not let fear control or rule our lives. It's important to recognize when fear is driving our behavior, though, and to seek support in developing healthier ways of managing that fear. This might involve gradually facing our fears, reframing negative thoughts, and building resilience. Over time, we can learn to respond to these challenges with courage and confidence rather than letting the fear hold us back. Another way that fear can kind of mess with our heads is through social interactions. Strained relationships due to avoidance, due to aggressiveness, or due to clingy behavior. Social isolation. We don't want to be bothered with people. We'd rather be by ourselves. Is that really healthy? We have decreased empathy, decreased compassion for others, and going along with the group in fear of being rejected or in fear of being criticized. So let's look at strained relationships. Fear can lead to behaviors that can put a strain on our relationship and avoidance. In other words, not spending time with friends due to social anxiety, or let's say spending time with certain friends. In my social youth, when I used to hang out a lot, there were 3 other guys that I used to hang with. There was a safety net that I had with those guys. I had one friend that was outgoing. I had another friend that was super quiet, and I had another friend that was kind of like me, kind of in the middle. I knew what those personality types were. I could kind of guess how the night was going to go if the 4 of us hung out. But what always threw something off was if a different person came into that group, came into the circle. It threw the energy off a little bit. Strained relationships as far as aggression. Do you have this family member that kind of talks to you crazy, so you kind of walk on eggshells in terms of what subjects you bring up or what energy you bring? Have you dealt with a person, maybe even a partner, that certain subjects you bring up, they automatically lash out to you? And when they lash out, what does that do to you mentally? You know, A, not to bring it up again, or B, if you decide to bring it up, maybe bring it up in a different way that doesn't produce a trigger with them. Another part of it is looking at the clingy behavior. people who constantly need to be reassured. They constantly need to be told that they're good enough. That clingy behavior is really kind of annoying to me. The fact that you are always looking for self-assurances from someone else, that starts with yourself. That starts within you. If you don't like yourself, if you're not in a good place with yourself, how can you ask someone else to provide that for you? So that clingy behavior is something that's not only a turnoff, it's something that really needs to be addressed. Then we look at social isolation. In an effort to avoid feeling of fear of anxiety, people sometimes withdraw from social interactions altogether. Do you know somebody that used to hang all the time, that used to be at every party, you would see them in every social event, but now they never leave the house? What stimuli produced that behavior? What happened in their lives to make them not want to even leave the house anymore? This can lead to a feeling of loneliness. It could lead to a feeling of disconnection, which can negatively impact mental and physical health. And then we look at the decrease in empathy and compassion. When we're consumed by our own fears, we may have less bandwidth to understand and support others. In other words, when we're caught up in ourselves and when it's all about us, it's hard for us to be compassionate to others. It's hard to show that level of care and concern for others. This can make us come across as more self-centered. It makes us come across as being less caring and potentially damaging our relationships with people. And then conforming. The fear of rejection, criticism, or not fitting in can lead people to go along with the group, even if it's against your own values or your own beliefs. So, I think about back in the day, the first time I ever smoked a cigarette. I was a anti-smoking guy. Smoking was a part of my life, but I saw the effects of smoking. But I was with a group of friends that kind of was dogging me out because I didn't want to smoke. They were talking crazy to me. They were calling me names. I was a chicken. I was less than. And to prove them wrong, I succumbed to what they wanted me to do. I took that cigarette. So, in our weakest moments, we need to dig deep and try to find the strength not to conform to something, especially if it's something that is going to hurt you as an individual. So we're all guilty of those types of things. It's important to recognize how fear might be impacting our social interactions and to seek support in building healthier relationships. This might involve practicing assertive communication, gradually facing fears, and nurturing supportive relationships with those who encourage us to be our best selves. Over time, we can learn to connect with others from a place of security and confidence rather than fear. So the social aspect, as I said last week, we were talking about how our social circle has more influence over our behaviors than our families. And with that being said, I believe that we're going to be taking another break here in a minute or so to pay some more bills. And then we're going to look at the effects of the spiritual effects of what fear can do to you, which all ties into Mental Health June. We'll be right back after these messages.
Give it to me, do it to me, give it to me, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, the way you make me feel.
Do you like music like this? That's right, I'm asking you. Do you like music like this? Then why have you not been to Sophisticated Saturday as yet? That's right, each and every third Saturday of the month, we call it Sophisticated Saturdays. Where we keep it at? Caribbeanlifetv Studios. 6254 Memorial Drive is the only place to be each and every third Saturday of the month. So if you want to celebrate your birthday, if you just want to come hang out and have some fun with grown people having big fun, Sophisticated Saturdays is the only place to be. It's brought to you by yours truly, DJ Reds, and my boy, Mr. B. Sophisticated Saturdays, every third Saturday of the month, 6254 Memorial Drive is where the grown people go and have good, clean fun. Every third Saturday of the month, man. The way you make me feel, I'm just going to have fun. I'll see you there. Sophisticated Saturdays. I got you.
That's just how we roll.
Let me tell you who I'm rolling with. I am rolling with the Dot Experiment. I don't know if you ever heard of them before, but the Dot Experiment is here to help you with all your cell phone and computer needs. The Dot Experiment is here for all your tech, all your software problems, whether it's the storage full, your laptop won't boot, or you're just tired of your current setup, or you're just looking for tech support. The Dot Experiment is the only way to go. Call them today, 404-259-1343, or you can email them at support@thedotexperiment.com for a free consultation. Don't waste your money buying tech stuff and tech software that you don't understand and don't know how to use. Contact the Dot Experiment, the professionals in fixing all your stuff, man. So before you buy that cell phone, before you get that computer, contact the Dot Experiment. It's the only way to go. I'm telling you, that's how we rolling over here.
All right, and we're back. We're talking about fear and how it kind of affects our lives. And the last part of the fear factor that we want to look at in the home stretch of today's conversation is the spiritual effects. We lose meaning and purpose, decrease resilience and hope, feelings of powerlessness and extant anxiety, fear of death, fear of the unknown. So the loss of meaning or purpose, when we're consumed by fear, we may lose sight of what gives our lives meaning and direction. We may feel like our lives is kind of floating along with no purpose. We're uncertain about our paths on how to move forward. This can lead to a fear or a feeling of emptiness, a fear or a feeling of disconnect from our core values and from our beliefs. Decreased resilience and hope. Chronic fear can erode our ability to bounce back from challenges. We may feel overwhelmed and hopeless, doubting our abilities to navigate difficulties. This can make us feel stuck and pessimistic about the future. What about when we feel powerless? Fear can make us feel at the mercy of our forces beyond our control. We may feel like a small boat adrift in a stormy sea, unable to steer our own course. That lack of power can be a deeply disempowering and demoralizing feeling. And then how about the anxiety, fear of death, fear of the unknown, or the mysteries of the universe can create a deep-seated anxiety. We may, struggle with big questions like, what is the point of life? Or what happens after we die, and feel unsettled by the lack of clear answers. It's important, though, folks, to recognize when fear is impacting our spiritual well-being, we need to seek support not only from God, but maybe from a spiritual leader. This might invoke practices like meditation, getting down on two knees and saying a prayer, or spending time in nature, getting back to Mother Earth. Connecting with a spiritual community or working with a spiritual advisor can also provide comfort and guidance. So if your faith is kind of shaky right now, have a conversation with someone, in the spiritual realm that can ground you and get you back to normal. So what are some of the things that we can do to help us, avoid these fears and kind of heal from this? The first thing we need to look at is if we're afraid of something, we need to be honest with ourselves and acknowledge it. We need to recognize what that fear is. We need to accept it as a part of our personality and a part of our human experience. And we need to stop avoiding or denying or suppressing the fear that, affects our lives. So for me, fear of snakes. I'm walking through the woods the other day. I saw a snake. I'm an old man. Believe me, I tried to run. But the thing that I had to do was, identify why was I so afraid of snakes. And when I looked at it and when I thought about it, I remember being in 5th grade at the zoo on a field trip. And my teacher had the snake around her neck, and she was encouraging all the children to pet the snake. I wasn't doing it. And because I didn't do it, she kind of treated me differently that day. And so as a 10-year-old kid, that fear of snakes perpetuated into a 50-year-old man. Here I am still dealing with that same issue. So the only way that I can overcome my fear of snakes is to learn about them, look at them, read them. So what is your snake in life? What is your fear in life? We have to acknowledge it and face it And by acknowledging it and facing it, we become better and stronger people. Another situation or another way to understand this fear is we need to identify that source. Where did that source come from? Well, that teacher, she loves snakes. She had them for pets. That wasn't the way that I moved. I don't want one. But because that's what she liked, it doesn't make her a bad person. But it doesn't make her a bad person to try to expose me to something that she likes. So are there people in your life that like certain things that you don't like, that want you to experience it from their eyes? What's holding you back from, going outside your norm and experiencing something new? That's one way that you can overcome that fear, is by getting outside your normal skin and trying something different for a change. Understanding that source can help you address it more effectively. Another thing that we look at is the challenges of negative thoughts. Oftentimes, fear involves irrational thinking. Practice good, clear thinking. Practice techniques that challenge and reframe these negative thought patterns into a more realistic and positive one. So I'm going to use that snake example again. The next time that I see a snake, I know that I'm not going to go as deep in the woods as I did before. I know that I'm going to wear long pants. I know that I'm probably going to wear better shoes. I'm not going to have flip-flops on walking in the grass the way I was walking in that grass. You learn from those experiences so that when that experience comes back again, we know how to better navigate and maneuver through that. Gradual exposure. Gradually and safely expose yourself to the thing or situation you fear. So again, I'm going to take a walk tonight when I get home. Now I know that snakes are a real thing. I'm going to have my stick with me. I'm going to make sure that I'm dressed properly, and I'm going to make sure to go during the day so that I can see that potential threat in front of me. I'm not going to go at 8:30 at night the way I did. So you kind of learn from your fears and you kind of move differently. The next thing that we need to look at is mindfulness and relaxation. Practice meditation. Take time for yourself to clear your head and to clear your thoughts. Find some relaxation techniques. Do you like to work out? Do you like to go for a walk or ride a bike? Maybe you like to cook. Maybe you like to just blast your music and dance when nobody is looking. These are these things that kind of bring that fear down. It brings down the mental health, and it helps actually to make you mentally healthier by taking the time to give yourself that time to heal and to reflect and to relax. Another thing that you can do to overcome this is to seek support. Now, while we all try to be tough and we try to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, we are all people and we all need help. We need to find people that support us, not people that's going to lift us up, not put us down. If you are in an environment or if you're around a bunch of people that has that negative energy, if you listen to the opening song to the show, Good Energy, I don't want that negative around me. You can't say it any simpler than that. Higher frequency. These are the types of people, these are the types of situations that we need to surround ourselves with. But you say, Jeff, how do I do that? Well, we all have common sense. If you're around somebody that drains you, if you're around somebody that kills your vibe, if you go into a situation and you feeling good and they kind of dampen your mood, that person may not be the right person to be around, and you have to find the courage to walk away from that situation. If they're bringing you down and you want to be up, you actually know what you need to do. Another thing that we do to overcome this fear factor is self-compassion. We need to treat ourselves like we treat our best friends. Why can't we show ourselves love on the same level that we show a friend or even that we show a stranger? Have you ever been in a situation where a stranger actually shows you more love than the people that's in your life every day? And if you can nod your head yes to that, that lets you know that compassion is out there. Compassion is out there in the world, and if you're in a circle of people that doesn't show you the same level of compassion to you that you're willing to authentically show to them, you need to take a look and maybe do some different things. Treat yourself with kindness and understanding, just as you would a friend in a similar situation. Remind yourself that it's okay to feel fear. It's okay to feel bad. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay not to be your best. The biggest thing is it's not how you lay down, it's how you get back up. Having the self-awareness to be able to do that. Another thing that we need to do to get out of this fear factor is let's focus on the present. We got to stop dwelling in the past. We got to stop dwelling on what people did to you yesterday or a year ago or 10 years ago. The only way that we can be mentally healthy in this crazy world that we live in is when something sideways happens, process it, understand it, but don't live in that space. Don't let it, put you in a place where you can't maneuver and that you can't live. Rather than worrying about the future or the past, focus on what you can do to control your present. Sometimes things are out of your control. Sometimes people do things that have nothing to do with you. But because it has nothing to do with you, don't give it the power to control your life and to control how you move. Take things one step at a time and engage in activities that bring your life joy and that brings your life fulfillment. And that also includes people. Bringing people that's not only going to lift you up, but they bring you joy and fulfillment as well as you bring that to them. Another thing to overcome this fear and to help us grow mentally is to celebrate the small victories. Acknowledge and celebrate when you do something good. Give yourself a pat on the back. You deserve it. Treat yourself to a nice meal. Treat yourself to a new outfit or something for yourself. After all, you give all your energy to your husband or your wife. You give your energy to your kids. You give your energy to your job. You give your energy to your mom and dad, your family members, cousins, brothers, and sisters. But what about giving that same energy back to yourself? Don't you think you deserve it? Don't you think you owe it to yourself to have it? When I leave here today, I'm going to do something nice for myself, not because I'm trying to be selfish, not because I'm trying to be self-centered, but because I've had a hard week this week. And you know what? In order for other people to like me, I really got to like myself. And I tell you, when I do something nice for me, I'm really a nicer guy, and I give off a more positive vibe. So I'm encouraging you to kind of take a page out of that book and do the same thing. Another thing that we need to focus on in order to overcome fears and to become stronger mentally is to practice a growth in a faith-based mindset. Now, in this show, we don't really talk about religion, but I am religious. I do have faith in God. I do have faith in the Creator. When things aren't going right, have a conversation with God. And I was just telling somebody the other day that I don't pray the way that most people pray. I don't get on two knees. In fact, I'll be sitting at a stoplight and I'll start having a conversation with God. I'll say something like, God, why are you messing with me when this happened? How can you help me get through this without acting a fool? This is my relationship with God. And, my relationship with God isn't yours and yours isn't mine. But, when you're in a space of feeling weak, when you're in a space of feeling vulnerable and you don't feel like you have a place to turn, there's no better place to turn than the Almighty. That person can guide you and maybe set you into a situation to help you maneuver and to help you to be a better, more rounded individual. So if religion, if praying isn't your thing, then meditate. Find a quiet place to be alone with your thoughts. Find a quiet place to really reflect and think about what your week is going to look like. What are some of the things that you're going to face this week? And go into those situations being prepared, being ready for a situation. That way, when you do face it, you're going to come out a lot more stronger. We talk about mental health, from the African American and even the Caribbean culture. It's something that we may have been told growing up that, wipe it off, wipe off the dust and keep going. You're going to be okay. You're strong. You can handle it. But in today's society, with how crazy this world is, we need to take an opportunity to really dive deep in to why we do the things we do, why we move the way that we move, and help create and be a better person. So with the end of Mental Health Month for men and for our sisters out there. Today we are talking about issues that have been shrouded in silence and in stigma for far too long within our communities. Mental health, fears, anxiety, depression. As African Americans and as Caribbeans, we have endured a legacy of strength and resilience from the struggles of our ancestors to the challenges we face today. But in our pride and our perseverance, we cannot afford to overlook the importance of our minds and our mental well-being. There's a misconception, folks, a dangerous myth that seeking help for mental health means weakness, that depression, anxiety, and other struggles are signs of flaws rather than signs of human condition. This could not be further from the truth. Acknowledging that we need support, acknowledging that we need help, that we cannot face every battle alone is not only brave, but it's necessary for our survival and it's necessary for us to thrive. We are a people who have overcome unimaginable things. We have risen from the ashes of oppression. We have risen from broken chains of bondage, and still we rise. But the battles of the mind are real wars, and their demands our attention, it demands our compassion, it demands our action. Depression, anxiety, and fears are not weaknesses, but they are common challenges that everyone faces. I face them, you face them, we face them. And just as we would seek help from a doctor for a physical ailment, we are not too good not to seek help from a professional in the mental health space. The good news is that help is available. Therapists, support groups, and even resources online that can help us become better people. But first, we must break down the walls of silence. We must break that stigma. We must create space where it's okay not to be okay, where it's okay to ask for help. We need to have open and honest conversations with the ones we love, the people in our circle, as well as mental health professionals. And if you don't have those people, find those people. Find the people that have that struggle, because, you know, sometimes the best way for us to heal is to hear the stories of somebody who struggles the same way we do. It kind of brings us a sense of security in a way of knowing that we're not the only ones that go through certain struggles, that go through certain issues and problems. And surround ourselves with people that are going to uplift us and who are going to help us face these challenges. Because we as black folks, we are resilient people. But being resilient doesn't mean that we have to suffer in silence. We can speak up when things aren't right with others. Why don't we speak up when things aren't right within ourselves? Resilience means facing our struggles head on, seeking the help that we need, and supporting one another along the way. We have the power to change the narrative around mental health in our communities. We have the power to create a culture where seeking help is a sign of strength and not shame. So let's rise to this challenge. Let us educate ourselves about mental health. Let's reduce the stigma, and let's start creating supportive environments. Let's learn where to find help and how to support those who are struggling. Let's help our children. Let them know that it's okay to express their emotions. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to prioritize our mental health. We are a people of great strength and endurance. We have overcome so much, and we can overcome this mental health issue as well. Let's embrace our culture of care. Let's embrace our compassion, and let's start having these open conversations. Let us show the world that we prioritize our minds just as much as we prioritize our bodies, because when we take care of our mental health, we become even stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to face this crazy world and this crazy life that we live in. So let's take some action this week. Let's rise up. If you've been quiet, stop being quiet. Let people know that you're not okay. Seek out that help, because you deserve to be your best self, to not only create a better life for yourself, but a better future, because we are worth it. I'm worth it. You're worth it. We are worth it. Our minds are worth it. And together, we can overcome anything if we put in a little bit of effort. So today's message was more about education. It's about, I know that life is kind of hard sometimes. Bills are due. Heck, rent is due in a couple days. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of a deflating feeling. I got to go in and drop this check, drop this little $1,600 and start from ground zero. And it's like, man, when are things going to become easier for me? Well, I'm here to let you know life isn't easy. It's not going to get any easier. But as long as you keep fighting, you keep standing up. When people push you down, stand up. Don't let anybody overtalk you, overstep you, knock you down, or make you feel less than. Those fears are the reason why you see on the news people shooting up schools. Those fears are the reason why families are falling apart. Those fears are why relationships are unhealthy. Those fears are the reason why we have toxic people in our lives. People are going to tell you that you're not good enough. People are going to tell you that you're less than. But the thing that I am going to challenge you with this week is that you are somebody. You are great. You are worth it. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you come from. You could come from the poorest of the poor or the richest of the rich. We are all worthy. God did not put us on earth because we were terrible people. What I'm asking you to do is grow a couple or grow a pair this week. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I really happy with my life? Am I happy with the direction on how things are going? And if you're not, let's start facing those fears and let's start educating ourselves in order to make ourselves better people. I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to try to get better. And that's what we try to do week in and week out with our broadcasts, is to just talk about things that we push down, talk about things that people don't want to talk about. Because you know what? God willing, we got a long life to live, and these days moving forward, we hope that our lives are going to produce the most positive outcomes for us to live our best lives. Because we hear people saying we want to live our best lives. In order to do that, we got to sometimes face the things that we want to push under. With that being said, I want to thank all of you for tuning in today, for being with us and spending your Saturday with me. We're going to dig deep into another issue next week. But mainly, I want you to walk into your life with that good energy. Surround yourself with people that are going to provide you with high frequency, with positive thoughts, and that are going to lift you up and not put you down. With that said, I'm going to bid you peace, Godspeed, and we will see you next week here on Just a Thought. Peace.
All I need is good energy. I don't need no negativity around me. High frequency. I'm talking higher G-O-D. Yeah. Good energy. I don't need no negativity around me. High frequency. I'm talking higher G-O-D.